I'd like now to introduce our second speaker for the afternoon. He spent more than 20 years developing and selling IT solutions and has developed and has successfully run his own IT business. He's an expert that has a lot to say about improving productivity, and he's someone that can actually make a huge contribution in your business in terms of getting more out of your systems and getting more out of your people. Please join me in a warm welcome, our IT and productivity industry expert from ECLEVA, Mr. Antun Scurla.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you all for joining us today. We're the productivity and technology experts at New South Wales Leaders. And the last couple of workshops I did, I've tended to focus on technology. But I thought today we might actually focus on productivity. So I'm going to be talking about productivity and more specifically workflow automation. Productivity is a big topic, and just want to focus a little bit more on workflow automation because I think it's more relevant to the people in this room. I'll just try to give you some concepts, some ideas, some things to look for in areas where you might be able to increase productivity in your business. So let's start off with a problem question. Imagine that these were your targets for a particular quarter. $1 million in revenue, 500,000 cost of goods, 300,000 operating expenses with a target EBIT of 200,000. Now imagine at the end of the quarter, you got this result. 850 revenue, 600 COGS, 255 operating expenses with a negative EBIT. Yeah? So I'm going to ask a clicker question. What do you want to do about it? Replace sales staff? Hire more sales staff? Look for cheaper service providers, subcontractors, etc.? Look for opportunities to cut overheads? Look for ways to increase productivity? All of the above? Get more information? Or no idea? So there we go, 10 seconds. Excellent. In fact, get more information, no idea, are probably the best answers in that context simply because there isn't a lot of information there. You need to drill down deeper to get to the bottom of it. Based on me, if I was looking at those figures, I'd be edging towards number 5 anyway, for reasons that we'll come to in a little while. So what is productivity? At a very high level, it's an economic concept, and I'm not an expert on economics, and I find the whole thing very dry and boring, but it's units of output divided by units of input. Right? So there's whole levels of complexity associated with defining all this stuff, but we don't need to go there. Really, it's the efficiency of converting resources into products and services. And just another way to think about it, we translate everything into money, but units of inputs and units of output aren't necessarily money. They could be time, they could be other things. But anyway, it's converting resources into products and services. What outputs or products and services? Well, that depends on the organization. And what I've done here is I've cherry-picked little things from your websites, etc., about some of the things that you guys do. And apologies if I've missed anyone, because I did do this a couple of weeks ago. But as you can see, even for people in this room, they're significantly different. The outputs and products and services are different. What about inputs or the resources? Well, they tend to be kind of the same. Right? We're all working with people, equipment, including technology, etc. So our inputs are kind of the same, but our outputs are very, very different. So, another quick interactive question. How about you give me your view on a definition of increasing productivity. Achieving more with the same or less? Achieving the same with less? Achieving more with the least additional investment? Or any of the above? 10 seconds. Yep, any of the above. What we find is quite often most organisations, when we go and talk to them, want to achieve more with the same. They feel that that's the best investment that they can make, and obviously achieving more with least additional investment as well. But any of the above. I guess what this does highlight is when you're looking at productivity improvements, it's also worthwhile trying to understand what your real goal is in increasing productivity. So, how do we do it? Well, it all starts with process. We had those inputs and those outputs, and one could say that a large part of what we as managers or business owners or entrepreneurs do is to create, fine-tune processes that convert those inputs into outputs in the most efficient way possible. The good news is processes are part of our core. We work with processes, all of us in this room as individuals, processes are part of human nature. On the personal level, we call them habits, right? Every time we do something, we tend to repeat the thing, right? On an organizational level, they're processes. The thing that's important, just like with some of the stuff that Rebecca was saying, is you've got to write them down. Because once you write them down, they become conscious and something you can see and work on. The other thing you kind of need to do is you need to have a look at them and question them and say, hey, is this process actually doing the job for me, right? But it all starts with process. It depends on people. This is where the workflow automation bit comes in, because we're talking about knowledge workers, we're talking about people who are not running assembly lines necessarily, right? But people drive processes, people stop processes, so people involvement in processes is absolutely critical. It requires access to previously created information. I'm going to call that content. We have a lot of different definitions of content in the IT industry, but I'm just going to say previously created information. It leverages opportunities for automation, needs to be monitored and measured. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with process, like I said. This is a marketing and sales process, right? It's not the world's best marketing and sales process, it's just an example, and we're going to use this to kind of highlight a few things to consider and ways to think about it, right? The red bit's the marketing bit, the blue bit's the sales bit. We start off by devising a marketing strategy. We then decide what our messaging is. We create content for it. Then we deliver it by various means, monitor it, deal with inquiries, etc. At the end of that process, we get what we call a marketing qualified lead. So the marketing process has done its job to basically say, yep, this is a good enough lead by whatever measure to hand over to sales. And then sales works on its sales process. These titles, this particular sales process is very much aligned to a customer's buying process, right? So that's why those are the titles. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. But the important thing is, that's a process that's been written down. Has anyone read this book, Drive by Daniel Pink? No? I would absolutely recommend it. The surprising truth about what motivates us. So just for fun, it's great. He talks about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation and how people, particularly in the workplace, respond to various attempts to motivate them. However, for our purposes, Mr. Pink talks about two types of tasks. He talks about algorithmic tasks, where you follow a set of established instructions down a single pathway to one conclusion. There's an algorithm, a script for achieving it, right? So algorithmic tasks are tasks that can be written out in a script. I caught the train to come here today, and I used my Opal card. Wasn't too long ago that I actually had to go to a ticketing window where a human being, I would say, circular key, please, and they'd give me a ticket and stuff like that, right? Algorithmic task. What happened to it? It got automated. The fate of algorithmic tasks, tasks that can be given scripts for, is to either go offshore to lower cost resources or to be fully automated. So, algorithmic tasks. The other type of task he talks about is heuristic. No algorithm exists. You have to come up with something new, right? So, again, a lot of us who are kind of solving problems for customers who might be solving new problems, etc., have to come up with something new. The process may not exist. Again, Rebecca's example with Paul, he actually came up with something heuristic. He didn't just follow the algorithm of the tender process. Yeah? Heuristic tasks are high-value tasks. And they're resistant to automation. So, when we look at our process, we look at areas of the process that have high concentrations of algorithmic tasks, right? So what can be automated? It's a little bit hard to do the strategy, messaging, and create in a marketing process, but it's really easy to do deliver and monitor and the inquiry. And there are plenty of tools and things available to do that. Similarly through here, once we get to define and prove, we're actually creating proposals, setting up demonstrations or something like that. Again, there are a lot of algorithmic components to that. So when you look at your process, the first thing to think about is, where are the algorithmic bits? Where are the bits that can be automated? The role of content. Global knowledge workers say they spend 29% of an average workday searching for corporate information needed to complete work projects. And another one from IDC with a few different points. IDC has found US knowledge workers spend an average of 2 hours, 16 minutes per week searching for documents. That's the same sort of a thing there. IDC has found that most US knowledge workers reportedly spend 20 to 29% of their time per week extracting information from multiple documents to get their job done. So you have 50 to 60% of knowledge workers' work fiddling around with documents. Additionally, knowledge workers are most frequently using email to share and extract information for distribution of documents and for content extraction. That's why you've got the 50 and 60% loss, because email is terrible at being able to find information, but we trust it. So, what's the role of content in our process? If we look for our process, pre-prepared information affects every single step just about, right? Whether it's a template for a strategy document, whether it's a strategy document that you've done at this level and then need to, do something at a lower level, messaging, what you've done before, etc. And certainly in terms of this automation piece, you want to just be sending pre-prepared stuff. Similarly in the sales process. At various points in the sales process, you will tend to reuse the same sort of documentation. Not always. Sometimes it's going to be heuristic, but you need to look for opportunities where you can reuse, find, access pre-prepared content. Now, one of my favorites, handoffs and sign-offs. People are in this process. The process moves from one place to the other. There will be times when information or tasks are handed off from one person to the next. Just like in a relay race, you've got to hand the baton. It doesn't really matter how fast each sprinter is. you can spoil the whole thing if you have a bad handover. So another place to focus if you're looking at how to increase the productivity of your process is how the handoff's happening. There's also a reorientation piece that takes place. If I get a marketing qualified lead as a salesperson, I kind of stop my flow, start interacting with that, etc. So I need to reorient. So the question is, can you minimize those types of reorientations? And the leaky bucket is loss of information as it moves from one person to another. Because marketing sees the information they need in a particular light and context. Sales doesn't necessarily see the information in the same light and context. And without clear kind of communication and understanding, key information can be lost. It's not just about sales and marketing. Same thing from a handover of sales to delivery. So handoffs and sign-offs at best work as speed humps in the process. Right? But they can also stop the process altogether if it's a sign-off that's required. So we've got a handoff here from marketing qualified lead to sales qualified lead. Right? We could have another one here where the salesperson actually goes out and meets the customer and decides that actually this isn't a great lead to follow. They don't have the money, they're not ready quite yet, and then there's a handoff back into the marketing process for nurture marketing or whatever. Okay, so on the prove convince side, that's normally where you have senior management sign up for proposal or whatever, and it can stay in senior management's inbox for a while, and the process stops. And in ACT, it's actually the handover to delivery. I'm only talking about sales and marketing because we got a kind of a sales and marketing kind of day today, but this applies to every process, right? It's any process in your organization. So, what I'd like you to do, just for a couple of minutes, I've put a copy of this worksheet. I'd just like you to think about any sort of process in your business that you're reasonably familiar with, and just try to chunk it down into kind of key buckets or steps. Okay, so if you could just do that for a minute, we'll take it from there once you've had a go. What are the roles of systems in productivity? What's the role of systems in productivity? Well, clearly, they can automate algorithmic tasks. Yeah? So using systems and technology, you can automate algorithmic tasks, reduce your cost base, and move faster through the process in most cases. Systems can deliver the right content, previously prepared information to the right people at the right time and as efficiently as possible. They can manage and control handoffs and sign-offs. And a value add. They can automatically gather data to monitor and measure the performance of the process. So once you actually start enabling some of these processes with supporting systems, you actually start getting data that can actually help you measure the efficiency of the process and then take some further actions about it. We'll talk in a second about the data. So things to measure. From a marketing and sales perspective, this is just a list of things to measure. I won't talk about them. It's just a subset. Rebecca made a great point. We're talking about lead and lag indicators. You want to try to identify lead indicators. In a sales context, lead indicators are those activities. They're those calls. They're those meetings. They're those proposals. In a marketing context, they might be sessions, users, page views, pages per session. The good news is you can automate all of this stuff and get the data to measure, monitor it, and continue improving. Two other considerations. When does a task cease to be heuristic? Again, human history has been someone comes up with something and has a heuristic task. Someone else discovers, oh, actually, this isn't heuristic. It's algorithmic, right? So they automate it or find cheaper ways of doing it. One of the interesting areas where this is happening now is in the legal profession, right? Where you've got people who you used to have paralegals who would analyze emails and classify them based on whether they're relevant to a case or not. Well, these days with natural language interrogation programs and other things, what was considered heuristic is now becoming algorithmic. Those paralegals will be replaced. So AI actually puts more pressure on heuristic tasks to kind of maintain their status. So an important question to ask is, hey, is this task really heuristic? Can I do it in an algorithmic way? And process efficiency versus process quality. So I haven't really talked today at all about process quality. It's all been about efficiency. The thing to remember is you can create a very efficient process that gives you the wrong result, right? You know, this doesn't look like a very comfortable chair to me, but you could, create processes that actually give you the wrong result in terms of quality. So, for example, in handmade chocolates, right, you may not want to automate everything because you're actually not going to get the quality product that you want. That's not to say that I don't think there are opportunities for automation. Okay, so let's just very quickly return back to our little problem. So that was the quarter results. What if we could, for the next quarter, make these changes? Increase revenue by 5%, drop cost of goods by 5%, and operating expenses by another 2.5%. What would that mean? Well, our result would be an 8% EBIT, 74,000. So it's not the 20%, right? But by the same token, we've made small changes to our processes in there, and that's created a significant positive result. That's why I thought it was a productivity issue, because I constructed the question. But also because small changes can actually make positive results as long as they're done kind of across the board. The way we would recommend doing it is to actually get your strategy, write down your process, right, and then look at it and cherry pick, right? So you're not actually trying to automate the whole thing, right? You're cherry picking. And a month, you can cherry pick good value to automate something, right? So that's don't think of it as some sort of, the way to approach it is I got to write down and analyze all my business processes, etc. No, it's much more around, if you want to increase productivity, start at the top, start cherry picking. Because again, your high value ones you'll notice first, and you can act on them. So I always have this view, right, that what technologies, etc., are doing is that they're actually helping people once things get out of control, right? So it really depends. If you're a small operation with 2 or 3 people and you can walk over to Dan and ask a question or or whatever, you may not have huge opportunities for improved productivity. However, as you grow, those opportunities increase, exponentially. So it really, does depend on the size of your business and what you're trying to achieve. Thank you.